Yo, what's up, guys? Welcome to my very first podcast, the Blazar Vision Podcast. I have been in the works with this podcast for many months. Went ahead and opened a company in January, got some of my equipment situated, did a lot of work behind the scenes to think about the vision I want for this podcast, talking to a lot of people about it. A lot of friends, a lot of family, anybody really that I could get a different perspective on. I have gotten so many perspectives that I finally settled down on what I want to do. And that segues perfectly into the goal of this podcast. The goal of this podcast is for me to sit down with guests or discuss things that I find interesting or impactful in my life, whether I'm doing a solo podcast or guest podcast, and to share that experience, that perspective with everyone. This is more of a learning experience, especially when I have guests. It's like I'm a student in those podcasts, and I have a lot of guests in mind that are going to speak about topics that I've never contemplated before, or at least to the depth at which we're going to speak about. So, in those podcasts, I'm going to be very much a student and actively listening, trying to engage and take it further and possibly make it resonate with more people if possible. And so, Blazar Vision Podcast has spawned. Finally, I want to read you an excerpt, the charter, my charter for the podcast. So, at BVP, the Blazar Vision Podcast, we engage in practical discussions that span from everyday practicalities to philosophical intangibles, all aiming at uncovering deep insights that enrich anyone's life, regardless of their background. Episodes with guests shift to collaborative dialogue. The goal is not to win debates, but to explore perspective, come to common ground, and discover solutions together. Through active listening and also guiding guests to articulate their thoughts, we deepen our understanding and enhance the value of each conversation, bringing ideas to life and crafting meaningful narratives. Listen, it took me a long time to write that. I hope you enjoyed that. I don't know if it's too much, but listen, guys, that's truly the essence of this podcast. I am quite the deep thinker, or at least I try to be. And I really want to create a lot of meaning behind all the guests I bring on, all the topics I bring. And I'm not always going to hit the nail on the head. I'm very aware of that. It's a standard I set very high for myself. I'm aiming high. I might not get there, but the goal is to aim high and try to get there, attempt it. Every podcast, do something a little different, a little bit better than before, so we could keep improving the experience for you guys listening. And for everyone who has watched and listened to the Puka Circle podcast, season 4 specifically, where I co hosted with him, a huge shout out to you guys. I know a lot of friends and family have tuned into that series, so I really appreciate that. You guys have very well supported those podcasts, and I really appreciate that. Those are very fun podcasts to do. Really, the essence of those podcasts were discovering what to do when you have two people that have an interest in podcasting. How do you get that going? And I have to say, those are really good episodes. Another couple housekeeping items, guys, is I'm currently in my room. Unfortunately, the podcast setup that you might be used to if you're coming from the Puka Circle podcast is under renovation. We're renovating that entire area. And so I don't have a studio, a dedicated setup for the podcast. So right now I have to set up and tear down every time I do these solo podcasts. And until we have that podcast studio set up, I have to be more careful with my time. I don't have a lot of time to do this outside of my day job and my other responsibilities. So I'm trying my best to create a nice system that I could follow. And this is going to segue into today's topic, which is how to level up. Very corny. Yes, that's the whole point. No. How to level up. What does it mean to level up? What are we leveling up? We're leveling up ourselves. And how do we do that? One of the most important tools, I think, in personal development is introspection, the tool of using introspection to look deep within yourself to find answers to things that you've never thought you would be capable of answering. So I came up with a system to track how do we practically engage in introspection. Like truly, what are the steps? What do those steps actually look like and manifest? Because it's so easy to sit here and talk to you guys about, oh yeah, introspection, do it. But like, what does it mean if you've never done it? What do I when I say introspection? So, in order to dive into that, I'm going to give you guys an acronym. The acronym stands for reflect, optimize, execute, analyze, and reward. Okay. What does that all mean? That sounds so difficult for no reason. It should be pretty simple, but let's dissect it. Let's see if we can make it simple. What problem could be causing this problem? So there's like a hierarchy of problems, and the ones that surface are immediately apparent to you are likely the easiest to fix. The ones that are unanswered are going to take a lot more work to get to those fundamental problems that we're going to try to solve. I'm going to go ahead and give you guys an example. So, in reflecting, I have a problem where every time I go out, it takes me a long time to go out. Why does it take me a long time to go out? I keep misplacing things. I don't know where my wallet is. I don't know where my keys are, or I don't know where my pants are, or a certain sweater that I want to wear, like something specific like that. So I have a problem, right? If I put my keys in a certain place every single day, it would be very hard to misplace it. So we're coming to solutions. So the problem is I keep misplacing things. It's causing other issues like I'm leaving my house late all the time. And what do I do about something like that? If I keep misplacing things, if I knew where things were placed, that could better help me figure out where they are, right? And I would probably not misplace things. Okay, so let's just start with that. Very simple example. It's like, I know it's corny. I'll get called, it's corny, whatever. But listen, guys, it is so important that it deserves a podcast like this. So let's continue jumping into it. I've identified a problem and a potential solution. I need to organize my room so that the things that I keep misplacing don't get misplaced. Okay. So in the optimize step, the goal is to take the minimum step to act. What does that mean? What is the minimum step to act? It means what is one thing you could do right now that moves you towards solving the problem of, let's say, organizing my room. I first thought about this. I'm like, okay, I could just clean my entire room. Very simple, right? We're done. Clean my entire room. Here's the reality, guys. Cleaning my room turned out to be a very big task for me. It turns out every time I would clean it, it would just become uh, disorderly, like very quickly. I didn't have a rhyme or reason. I didn't have a system. And not only did I attempt to clean my room, I would only be able to clean very small parts of it and never the full thing in one swoop. And so I had to be honest with myself, and it was very embarrassing. I could do a lot of other complex things in my life, but it seems like cleaning my room was very difficult. That's the painful part to admit, and that's okay. That's my point is you're going to learn things when you do this exercise of introspection. You're going to learn things about yourself that are not flattering, but that's okay. But we can always aim a bit higher and get rid of some of them and improve. And by doing that, you can improve the lives of everyone around you. And trust me when I say this, I have improved the lives of people around me by having my room clean. For example, my mom, she would come into my room and see just chaos, and it would just give her anxiety all the time. Like, she would not want to step in my room. And this was a problem I caused my mom, clearly. But back to optimizing. What's the minimum step? Cleaning my room is too big of a task. I could try to clean my dresser, organize all the clothes in my dresser. I started to think about it, and way too big of a task for me, right? Very painful to admit, but like I started opening my dressers. All of the clothes were not organized, and I don't really like to fold laundry. And so I looked at it and I just couldn't act, right? It's important to realize this. If you're unable to act on something that the minimum step that you want to take, Please remember this. It is too big of a step. And that's okay that it's too big of a step, but it is too big of a step. If I was able to act and clean the entire dresser, it wouldn't have been too big of a step. That would have been the minimum step for me. But it was too big. I was looking at it and I just didn't do anything. It ended up not being cleaned or organized. And so I had to really baby myself at this point. And I had to say, you know what? I'm going to clean the top of the dresser. And at this point, guys, it's painful. It's painful that I'm admitting this. And it's embarrassing to say it on a podcast for everyone to watch. But this is the crucial point. It was a minimum step that I was able to take and actually finish, start to finish. I was able to clean the top of my dresser. So I had a bunch of papers on it, as you can imagine, my folders. I have just a bunch of things. It's chaotic. And I was able to find some places, organize some things together, and it created more, um, it created a sense of relief. Okay, now I know where all these things are, and it looks a little bit neater. I give the example of cleaning my room because we spend the most time in our room. We spend the most time in places where we sleep, our room, bedroom, right? So, what better way to resonate with everyone to talk about something like this? I'll take the hit for the embarrassment. That's okay. But as long as this helps somebody, I'm all for it. Jordan Peterson talks a lot about if your room isn't clean, don't try to change the world. Like, start with cleaning your room. And he's so right at such a deep level with that. So, anyways, I cleaned the top of my dresser. I was able to execute. That's the third acronym in ROAR. Okay. So, I was able to execute. And now it's time to analyze. Now, when you execute a step, it needs to have a pass or fail condition, right? When I was looking at trying to attempt to clean the entire dresser, all the drawers in it, too big of a task, that's a fail, right? I didn't do anything. Or if I didn't complete it all, I guess the pass would be all the drawers were clean, the top of the dresser was clean. Maybe it was swept, all the dust underneath it. That would be like the pass. But again, too big of a task for me. I wasn't able to act. So I had to break down the steps even more. So the top of my dresser was clean, and now it's time to analyze. Did you actually do what you were meant to do? I was able to clean the top of my dresser. I was moving towards the goal of cleaning the room. The dresser was clean, and the top of my dresser was clean, and that was good enough. Now, let me throw a twist on this. Had I moved everything from the top of my dresser and put it on the floor, that would be a fail. I have cleaned the top of my dresser, but I've created a mess somewhere else. So I've solved one problem but created another. So that has to be a fail. So it's important when you create these minimum steps is that you're not creating additional problems. Another way to think about this is when you take one step forward, metaphorically, you should not be taking two steps backwards. When you analyze, you want to move in the direction of solving the problem. And so in my case, I didn't create a mess somewhere else. All right. Now, here is the point, the crucial thing. Do not be a tyrant to yourself. I truly mean this. The last part of ROAR is reward. You must reward yourself for the good behavior, the good decisions, the good goals that you set for yourself, the moving in the right direction towards solving the problem. You must reward yourself. It doesn't have to be a huge reward. It doesn't have to be a financial reward. It could be a reward of peace and quiet. Like, I don't have to do any work for 5 minutes or 10 minutes, or I could watch a show before I sleep. Something that's okay, because we have to face it, right? I was at a point where I was unable to clean my room. So if I'm unable to do a simple task like that, which is okay, a lot of us can't do the simple things. That's fine. It's okay to reward yourself, because if you don't reward yourself and you become a tyrant to yourself, you're not going to follow very closely and pay as much attention to detail as you need and you deserve for yourself. That's why I end it with reward, because rewarding yourself, even if it's such a small thing and small minimum step you took it, and that deserves something. And when you keep repeating this process of introspection, identifying problems, and taking minimum steps to aim towards solving a problem, you're going to solve a lot of problems in your life. And this is going to it's going to start off pretty slow, right? I was only able to clean the top of my dresser. To give you a timeline, right? For when I identified that it was a problem, that my room was chaotic and I kept misplacing things, until I actually cleaned my room took 3 months. I want that to sink in. Everyone, stop what you're doing, right? It took me 3 months to clean my room, right? 3 months. Everyone, welcome. It took me 3 months, yes, around 3 months to clean my room completely. Yes, sometimes you start small, right? But look, now I'm on a podcast talking to you guys, have an editing process going, distributing all my videos. It takes time to build the good habits, even how small, rudimentary they are. But the process of introspection is what spawned all of this in the first place. I had to first think about, what could I be doing wrong right now? And so it's such an important tool, guys. And so before we end it, I want to throw one more twist on this whole introspection thing. And that would be the misuse of introspection. One way you can misuse introspection, and there are probably many other ways, is to overanalyze something in your reflection process where you don't come to any minimum steps. Like, if you're unable to move forward in the process and you create this loop of anxiety, basically, of reflecting so deeply and not acting, that is a very negative thing to do, because the whole goal of introspection is to aim towards solving a problem. And if you're stuck in this loop, you're not really aiming at solving the problem. You're stuck. You've actually created another problem. So just be conscious as much as you can. Give yourself some credit. If you're in a state like that, think about, here's my perspective on it. Think about a smaller problem to solve, right? Maybe the problem you're trying to solve is too big. So start at a problem that you think you have, that you would solve, that you could solve, and that you will take the minimum steps to solve and actually do it. Just keep that in mind. You don't want to take this too far. Again, be conscious of the scope at which you can handle and not create too much anxiety for yourself. This is a pretty intense experience, though, when you start reflecting on deeper things. Like, for me, it was pretty harmless. It's cleaning my own room. It wasn't a huge problem that affected other people. It did affect my mom, but like severely. So it's important to recognize that, reflect on that, and just think about it and give yourself some credit. The fact that you're even thinking about it in the first place is actually a really good start. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is how we level up. That's how we level up in life. We do it by engaging in introspection, comparing ourselves to who we were yesterday and not to other people. Because everyone has a different finish line and everyone has a different starting position. The hand that you're dealt from the dealer is different every time, but you're dealt whatever you're dealt in that game, you have to deal with it and use that to your advantage to thrive and to try to win the game. What you're trying to do is win at life. You're trying to level up. And you do that by comparing yourself to you and not anyone else, because, again, different starting positions, different goals. And I'll leave you guys with that. If you guys have any feedback for this podcast, I would greatly appreciate any comments, any feedback at all. If you have some ideas for any topics that you want to hear me talk about to some extent, definitely let me know. I have quite a bit of topics, but if you guys have any topics at all, I might prioritize that over some of the ones that I have. And so just let me know. And if you guys enjoyed this at all, if you find this helpful, all constructive criticism is welcome. I'm here to learn. And so I'll leave you with that, guys. Hopefully it was helpful and hopefully you enjoyed this perspective. And I will see you guys in the next Blazar Vision podcast. Thank you for watching.